Welcome everyone to this live stream. I guess we're live, at least it looks live. Anyway, if you watch this later, after the live stream, I'm really interested in your feedback because, so if you watch this later in a day or a year, just leave your comments what you're thinking, because you might have seen here on this channel we did a lot of, well, vintage stuff with SGI, MIPS stuff and regular Linux stuff here of today's x86 AMD Ryzen stuff and such. And I also sometimes said, well, not only did I provide just because I was initially curious with low-level GCC stuff on DOS, some low-level stuff of getting into graphic programming, because I always, back in the day 20 years ago, I wanted, it didn't work, and I wanted to actually finally have this done, of having written low-level code, because it's always something different of patching a little bit in the Linux kernel and doing it like really from zero, from scratch to something working. You might have wondered, this vintage stuff, Verge, Voodoo and Octane and all the other stuff, is this not totally waste of time, basically uninterested? And of course you're right, it's hobby, vintage, retro, just for the fun and sake of it. But let's talk about the future. So I sometimes mentioned maybe I should do a microkernel because of all the bugs and regressions in the Linux kernel, and been there, done that, 20 years. Also Windows and macOS not really that much better. And of course I'm thinking, so I could sit down now and write a microkernel. That certainly will take 10 years or so, realistically, at least somewhat something. If I hire a couple of people, then maybe 1 year of 10 people to get something basically functioning that is not as amazing as other commercial systems. So certainly, I mentioned this previously, maybe not the best time spent writing a microkernel. Of course there are, of course there is highly successful QNX, which at least a decade ago, highly successful microkernel, and the never stable or shipping or something GNU heard. And of course the L4 family of, well, also Mach back in the day that Apple is using in even macOS. Although in macOS it's not much used, basically they use it as a hardware abstraction layer. So the microkernel macOS, it's Mach, it's like, yeah, well, what, it's basically, it's mostly one large Unix process. But I was thinking, so certainly it might not even be the best idea in 2019 to do microkernel. Maybe, honestly, if I would like Apple want to do a flagship operating system, I said it before, the 1001, or in the meantime a couple of new distributions, 1005 or 1010 Linux distributions that we are, latest with Huawei's use of Pippin, something, whatever that was, Linux. I looked it up earlier, so you see 1005, 10, something, 20 Linux distributions, and already forgotten the name of the 1000 and whatever Huawei wanted to use. So honestly, of course, nowadays in 2019, if you wanted something, well, somewhat commercially feasible, probably doesn't make sense to write an operating system. And if you wrote one, then maybe just take Linux like the other 1000 other people. The question, of course, there is, it's just the 1011's Linux distribution, and the differentiation, there's very little. What else do you want? Better integration, better icons, better usability or support. Somehow, meh. It's probably why not so many people want some Linux distribution. Although commercially successful, if you wanted to copy macOS now, as peakbugs it is, just take Linux. You have all the decades of somewhat working drivers, from graphic 3D to storage and all the stuff in between. Is it the greatest state-of-the-art security-wise? Probably not really, and regressions and one address space. But anyway, the question is, what do you think? And I'm really curious, so comments below. What is the future of operating systems? Certainly monolithic kernel, I have my, with all the just other channel, IT news, everything's insecure, vulnerabilities all over the place. Somehow, in my opinion, let's be honest, monolithic kernel somehow not the very best idea. Everything in one address space, each typo, each bug. Even like TG3 here, it's some hiccups, the network driver can do whatever. Somehow in 2019 or even in 2001, somehow I'm not the most impressed. Microkernel, of course, already somewhat better. A little bit more isolation. Of course, DMA, direct memory access, could still clobber some memory of your TG3 or any other Wi-Fi card, unless you're using a modern IOMMU. But if we go crazy, like if you wanted to start something like truly revolutionary today, and not that I would suggest you to do that, but if you believe all the hype of buzzwords of artificial intelligence, even some studies predicted the death of the developer because in the future all the program is written by artificial intelligence. Personally, I'm a little bit skeptical, but let's be honest, if you wanted something like truly science fiction out of some Hollywood or Bollywood movie, and like, then certainly microkernel is not state of the art, right? Microkernel was state of the art 30 years ago. And so if you wanted to go like totally innovative and totally nuts, would the future be artificial intelligence operating system? I'm wondering. I want to hear from you, and this is not a joke. I'm not want to trigger you. I'm just brainstorming, and yeah, I mean, certainly with robots like self-learning assistants, but also, let's be honest, in my opinion, this personal assistants like Siri, Alexa, Google, whatever, Samsung's Bixby and what their name be, in my opinion, they are just some very good speech recognition, which certainly we had. I made videos, good speech recognition a decade ago, starting off speech recognitions 2 decades ago, somewhat working their VIA voice, previous videos. Of course, nowadays they have better, not only better performance, better accuracy, but also better background noise isolation and stuff. But honestly, but as usual, leave me in the comments below what you think. My impression of this personal assistants, they are mostly a scripted system of recognizing keywords. So my opinion, they are not like deep artificial intelligence stuff. It's very good speech recognition, yes, and some of which in the beginning Apple even licensed from whoever, Nuance or whoever that was, allegedly I heard. So in the meantime, they might have their own, but whatever. So a very good speech recognition system, but that is not artificial intelligence, right? What I've seen is a scripted dialogue system of recognizing. You can even test this if you, at least with Siri, didn't test too many of the others, but at least with Siri, if you dictate their total garbage word in between, like FaceTime, my car, my wife or so, it will still FaceTime. It just tracks on some keywords like FaceTime or call. And if there's some random garbage in between, it will not even use it. So in my opinion, it's some scripted keyword system, not the most intelligent. I've even tried this recently. I was joking this already. I told my new Catalina macOS installation, hey Siri or whatever, turn on dark mode. It could not even turn on dark mode, right? And there you see the limits of intelligence, which in my opinion is totally scripted. So keywords of you can do this, turn off, turn on, turn this, turn that, call, email, whatever. But not, in my opinion, this is not intelligent. Intelligence would be, and there you see how overhyped this is. Most of the intelligent stuff is just some pre-trained set of self-driving recognition. It's not really intelligent, right? It's just like image recognition, visual guidance monitoring, and not really intelligence in my opinion. It's just even keeping the same, keeping the lane, keeping the distances is not intelligence. This is just a similar scripted system of keeping inside some boundaries. Really, artificial intelligence would be if this stuff would be self-learning, when this stuff would be really intelligent and you could tell your, hey computer, turn on dark mode, and the computer would tell you, I don't know what dark mode is, what do you mean? Say, yeah, this, you know, this fancy UI stuff, can you make it dark like this, dark there, this switch or whatever? It says, ah, yeah, sure, okay, fine. And then when you tell your intelligent operating system, hey, turn on dark mode the second time, would say, yeah, of course I learned this, you mean this freaking dark mode, right? So, and we are certainly not there yet, we are far from there, but I just wanted to throw this out into the open for discussion. Really curious what you expect in the future, maybe not 10, 20, but 50 years. That is of course also the difference, right? Of course, I'm totally aware that writing a microkernel, it's neither innovative nor it's certainly a super huge task, right? And if we wanted to say, okay, macOS has peak bugs, the 1011 Linux distributions are all similar but not as smoothly integrated as some other operating systems, and we would want to copy this, then certainly that would be much easier than writing everything from scratch. And even if we say, okay, this stuff is too insecure, we want to sell or support and subscribe to users with whatever, some more secure operating system, and that should be microkernel for the more address-based isolation and better maintainability and flexibility and ease of writing drivers and stuff. We could still take all the BSD drivers, right? It wouldn't mean, then of course it's people tell me, yeah, I only store all the stuff, but honestly, of course, that is what even Apple has done, right? Apple has taken, or well, they purchased Next Computer or whatever their name was, and they of course have even Next with Steve Jobs there in the probably end of 80s or whatever that was. They've also stolen, like Steve Jobs' famous word of good artist's copy or whatever that was. But they have of course used, I guess, open source Mach, microkernel and BSD userland there, this GNU userland, even the whole tools, right, even find and all the other basic stuff, and certainly the compiler, right, with the GNU compiler, and even then their new fancy Xcode compiler is of course C-Lang, LLVM, C language front-end CFE, also here on this channel. And then they didn't steal it, they hired the Chris Ludner, the inventor, one of the key people there at the university, also open source university work. But yeah, you see even the largest companies, they do not invent everything, they license speech recognition until they copy it and write it themselves then later. And yeah, take other people's microkernel, well, we could certainly do the same, right? Take some L4 microkernel. There even has been, I think there was an attempt to port HERT to L4, a higher performance microkernel than Mach. So yeah, certainly we would not necessarily have to write everything from scratch. I will probably continue to document here some low level how to really do this from scratch anyway, but just wanted to bring it out to the wild. Maybe not the best time spent of myself, so certainly not competing with Apple there or Microsoft tomorrow. I just wanted to have some discussion, and also that people think like, what would you want? I'm already surprised that when I made the community post of would you be interested, which probably I could pull up here on YouTube here, so probably the video plays. I was surprised that I made the poll of you want some polished Linux distribution here in the community tab. And I was honestly surprised. I didn't expect that. Actually, this was mostly joking. I saw it probably here, or yeah, what kind of system would you be most interested in? And I am genuinely surprised that people voted for desktop Linux distribution as polished as macOS. I didn't expect this, right? And this got quite some, 93 votes in the meantime. So not only me, my friends, myself and my family, so at least 92 or 90 other people of you. This generally surprised me, right? So that even, there you see, there would theoretically be even a market. And by the way, I've said this before, that I've seen many people I know from major distributions, some key people at major Linux distributions, at SUSE and stuff, some of which are running macOS, right? And personally, I find this really disgusting that people get paid to work on a Linux distribution, and because they like macOS so much, they do all their programming on a Mac and just like secure shell to the Linux servers in the data center. Or I know one guy at one distribution doing PowerPC, he had certainly a MacBook with macOS and did all, and he was using Apple Mail. Why is Linux desktop not more amazing? Well, when some key people at Linux distributions do not even use Linux desktop, then it's not a surprise that maybe that is not the most amazing. Yeah, actually this changed a little bit. I think initially it was like 30%, so, but I think this overtook here maybe the last weeks or so, a little bit with multi-server, microkernel. So yeah, really looking forward to your comments also later if you watch this, because also neural networks, right? Artificial intelligence is mostly glorified, so it's just a huge cluster of floating point or so variables, right? So it's just some massive. So what is machine learning? Machine learning for the most part is here also maybe on this Medium article, it mostly opens this for part 4, neural networks and deep learning. Let's see what they have to say. Probably something you might want to read later or so, or next time you commute. So it's just some very huge set of layers. These are just some hundreds, if not thousands or 100,000s of data points. So you just have a huge mountain of data points that you manipulate and train, like training is manipulating, and back or so propagate, learn them with some set of, you give it the training set and an output set and like training images like of a lion and a dog and a mouse and a cat and stuff, and modify the values so long, like basically for hours or days. Certainly with some guided learning can speed this up instead of just randomly modifying this. But yeah, so you have a huge mountain of numbers, which again, this stuff is not intelligent, right? This also, I wanted for some time already call out that in my opinion, this artificial intelligence based on deep learning with neural networks is not the most intelligent, I would say, because it's not like you train this huge mountain of numbers on some set of input for some set of outputs, and it's not doing anything else, right? It's not inventing something new. It's not writing a novel and welcome Descartes, welcome everyone in the audience. So in my opinion, not the extremely most intelligent, but yeah, certainly it can do pretty things, right? It can recognize dogs and cats and images and traffic lights and stuff, and maybe speech, but as far as I know or heard, or actually probably Google in the meantime, or maybe Apple, they have maybe some neural network based speech recognition, but the early speech recognition, the early good, or well, until some years ago, all the good and fast speech recognition even was based on other statistic models and not that much on not using really this kind of neural network deep learning. But anyway, certainly, but the thing is, if I comment this further, then I spoil the comments. Really curious what you think. But certainly, if in terms of what we have invented and where we are with all its features and bugs and security vulnerabilities, if you compare this to stuff that Steve Jobs and others have stolen or copied or inspired there at Xerox PARC when they, well, Xerox didn't wanted to sell all this stuff they invented for the most part, and people took their look and commercialized it, like Steve Jobs at Apple and so on, then if you think out of this box of classic kernels, monolithic microkernel, and if you really wanted to invent something today, then certainly it's neither a monolithic nor a microkernel. I don't know what it is. That is the nature of doing really state-of-the-art invention and research. But yeah, I'm thinking, but the problem is if I say more, then I spoil the comments. So maybe you want to stop here and comment first. But the real innovation would certainly be something like Star Trek kind of computer, like really artificial intelligence. However, like where you can say, hey computer, do me that, calculate that. But in my opinion, we are very far away from that. That is also what I wanted to call out in the media with all the buzzwords like artificial intelligence here and there. But leave in the comments what you think. I'm curiously, really interested, truly interested in your comments and feedback. What do you think is the future of computing, especially with all the peak bugs and security vulnerabilities, not only on macOS, but to some part also on Windows? Just the update disaster in our weekly IT news. Updates not loading, updates breaking something, maybe not as well, sometimes also on a major scale, maybe not usually as peak bugs as macOS, but certainly different peak bugs. And even in the Linux kernel, certainly the Linux kernel detailed what exactly do you mean with this? Whatever the future is, it's not this. You mean artificial intelligence operating systems or this present or peak bugs and monolithic kernels? Yeah, certainly from from really truly artificial intelligence. I'm also wondering how much quantum computer will help with this. Personally, but again, leave me in the comments below, what do you think about quantum computer? Will they have any practical use anytime soon? Or will they bring us in a decade Star Trek, like, not a paid advertisement, Star Trek or Star Wars, whatever. Star Wars not really did they had speech recognition? Anyway, Star Trek, like computers that you can talk with and they learn something, and I don't know, like some data. AI, so detailed wise, AI is very good at analyzing things, recognizing patterns, triangulating data, not very good with context, nuance, and etc. Yeah, so the issue is, that's also what I'm thinking. And the issue is certainly that the classic deep learning, machine learning, AI stuff is that it's just, as I said, it's just a mountain of data that recognizes the pre-trained pattern. So this, in my opinion, this kind of neural network cannot write novels or paint pictures or do creative stuff that it didn't learn before. Not even, hey computer, start, I don't know, write this mathematic formula or write this email. So unless it's this current systems of pre-scripted keywords that initiate actions and not very much beyond that. Anything, yeah, exactly that is what I said in the beginning. Dietrich says, try using Google Assistant for anything useful. That's what I said in the very beginning, that in my opinion, these are very keyword-based, very static keyword-based systems that, if you are lucky, can do that. As I said, my example of, hey Mac, hey Siri, turn on dark mode, can't even, which by the way, I'm not really sure, I might not have, does this even turn on dark mode?
Sorry, I can't help you with that.
Yeah, also I have the feeling, not using this daily, but I have the feeling the Siri speech output somehow became worse. Maybe they switched to their own and the previously licensed one was better. But yeah, anyway, I mean, the funny thing is that if you Google this, you find here even some article, artificial intelligence operating systems, that was even technology in the 21st century, not making this stuff up. And that was published in, so they also have a date here. But anyway, just wanted to throw this out there. Again, this is, but I'm also still curious. So even if you find, I started here with in the very beginning, monolithic kernel versus microkernel, and welcome Glaucus. So I'm truly, yeah, what do you think? I'm certainly, so this questionnaire truly surprised me here with this result. But this is also my thing. Thanks for asking how I'm doing. I'm doing relatively okay. Also, we had crazy support today at Exacode. I already was thinking, considering making just a live stream about crazy support incidents at, I don't know, it's hilarious in 2019. Anyway, maybe we'll do this, but maybe you don't want to even hear this IT stories of crazy support stories. It's hilarious. Anyway, thanks for asking. I hope you all do fine. But again, just also want to shout out, I'm personally, I have the feeling, so right now, many people are not very happy with subscriptions, with cloud telemetry, with Microsoft and even Apple. If our support indications at our company, and certainly even helping many customers, new customers this month who couldn't scan anymore because their scanner drivers doesn't work anymore, or the software, because Apple for the most part even intentionally broke it, and the companies say, you know what, the scanner is old enough, we don't even support it anymore because we have too many peak bugs. So even those people who we can help with our software, the feedback is often they are really annoyed at, well, certainly, well, the scanner is not working, but even those companies are already annoyed, starting with many of which did not anticipate their Mac automatically loading a major update of an operating system that even is majorly broken. My own indication and also IT news here from all the forums and Twitter and company. So I have the feeling many people are really frustrating with Mac and Mac OS. certainly peak bugs, and it's also not helping that the Macs, many people like ourselves are not very happy with the Apple hardware lineup with soldered SSD, glued-in batteries, very few ports, and all the things in between. So given all the frustration on that front and Windows, I have the feeling there is right now quite some possibility for a really polished operating system. Of course, it needs to work. It needs to work somewhat better than macOS and Windows, be shiny and supported. I have the impression, Haiku, probably people want Haiku, but to finish that thought, as we have still some people watching, as usual, the longer we get into streams, the more people we have watching. I personally think if you created Linux distribution, the problem is there are only so many hours of a day. So if I would have infinite time, certainly would write a microkernel system, because Linux, even Linux for myself is regressions, instabilities, you name it. But speaking about realistic things in 2019, if you would take some funding of big backers and make an extremely polished Linux distribution like a macOS, but not as user limiting, but polished and supported, and you could even go crazy, right? Throwing here some ideas out, you could, what I really wonder is that not many people are doing this, takes Linux kernel, make a really pretty integrated experience like macOS, and then you could even take Wine and have an integrated Windows experience, even with a Steam gaming store. Somehow, although that is quite some... I wonder, why is there nobody like really doing something as integrated, polished as that? I have the feeling there is a market now, of course. Not that it's the most top secret idea, but certainly, no, I'm not saying that it's easy, but I have the impression there could be a huge market demand of finally something extremely polished. And of course, you need to have it supported in a really stable manner, certainly more stable than macOS, but that normal people don't need to mess around all the like drivers and updates in a manner that it just works, like more just works than macOS used to just work. I think that could probably be, even on Linux-based stuff, quite interesting. And I mean, very theoretically with Wine, with some Windows compatibility, it could even get quite some momentum. But anyway, what would you thought about making a microkernel compile at boot time? Yeah, I discussed this already, but this is also something that would theoretically be this dtart says JIT, and but since this live stream gets too long, although as usual when we live stream, here's some, how long is it, with 0 drop frames after docs is reconnect, 30 minutes. I made some other videos, and this is also dtart is right, but there you see it doesn't matter, right? If you write a microkernel, or even actually probably it should be a microkernel, you could, all those drivers could be are separate processes, and you could make all of them. You could have a file system server written in Java theoretically, and there was a Java OS, which maybe was not the worst, but and honestly, if we are honest, you cannot write it in C nowadays for all the security, and this is so vintage. Certainly you should in some way. It is also crazy in my opinion, but comment what you think. In my opinion, it's crazy that in the Linux world, or the Linux and BSD world, we are writing kernels and all the userland and command tools and libraries in C, with all the known issues with C and security track record of vulnerabilities, boundary out of bounds, and connected stuff in 2019. Nothing, let's be honest, nothing should be written in C. And if we are extremely honest, as much as I personally don't like that, it should also not be written in C++ either. If we are really honest with ourselves, we would need some really secure language, like maybe Rust. And I never said, with all the haters and flame wars, I never, by the way, said Rust. I made some critical Rust videos, but they are mostly cargo, right? The only thing at Rust, or the major thing at Rust that I'm not the most comfortable with, is the micro-dependency ecosystem around cargo and bootstrapping Rust with Rust, and that never worked for me so far, which probably we need to continue soon. But Rust as a language might even be actually pretty amazing. I'm really really pity that at least I myself and also others not the most comfortable with implementation. But let's be honest, if we want real true security in 2019, and let's leave me in the comments below what do you really think, if you're honest with yourself. We need stuff only written in secure languages. That means no C and C++. Certainly maybe something like Rust or similar languages, maybe. And then certainly even in a pretty, well, also with Rust you have sometimes unsafe constructs, especially if you're writing if you're writing an operating system kernel, sometimes you need some low-level hardware stuff that maybe is not the most safe then, even in Rust. But two things that I would find amazing, that as Diethard correctly quoted there, JIT, just-in-time compilation, or ahead of time. I would actually, if filling this void in the market of a truly user-friendly, polished, like Linux or whatever distribution that is more amazing than Mac or Windows, using Linux and the existing infrastructure would only reusing as much as possible for the shortest possible time to market, and reusing the open source resources as best as possible. If we wanted to do truly amazing, in my opinion, probably we would need to write everything really secure, like with Rust or whatever. And what, in my opinion, would be really cool, given the development of CPU architecture, there's always some, but this new single instruction multiple data, or this low level like hashing function or bit counting function, yes, even pop count and stuff is new in Intel CPUs, then just-in-time compilation or ahead-of-time cached compilation, like Android does it a little bit, but that would be quite cool for the future, because then you could compile once and not have this issue with Linux or even Mac or Windows. You compile it once for the smallest common feature set of not using AVX 512 whatever, which is why you have very few commercial AVX 512 beside Intel chips clocked down then don't reach that turbo boost. But in my opinion, that would be amazing. That even someone else reminded me, and that is also why some of these YouTube videos are actually pretty cool, and even give me some feedback, because one issue with vectorization is that this blows up binaries quite a lot. So if you compile, even if you compile, let's say you can compile for latest and greatest Intel AVX 512, and that is actually then blowing up the binaries quite a lot, because it needs to create loops for alignment also. So because many of the single instruction multiple data only accelerate very good if the data is aligned. So you have the code gets large, like enormous, because it double and triplicates all the loops for alignment. So pre-loop, like aligning the data, not aligning, is it aligned? So if you have just-in-time compiler, probably it could do a much better job with single instruction multiple data, like pre-compiling, just-in-time pre-compiling, marking the loops, like this loop is vectorizable, this and that, and then the just-in-time compiler, like JavaScript and similar Java, can even lay out the data on runtime so that it's properly aligned, not like this old-fashioned manually allocated C stuff where your data is not even aligned best for single instruction multiple data use, but very theoretically there probably is quite some stuff. So in the meantime, we had quite some comments. Glocos agrees, it seems that everything what is related to get a lot of momentum takes Steam, Proton and Div, for example. I agree, it seems that everything wine related gets a lot of momentum. Like, yeah, maybe, so you could even, maybe I should just make this a hobby. Well, there is only, you see, why do I turn to YouTube? There are so many ideas I wish I would have time and money to realize. Certainly we need to automate our T2 updates more. That frees another 10 minutes or 15 each and every day. Every 15 minutes counts. And then certainly document here some more low-level assembly, FPGA microkernel stuff, but maybe makes this a new 20% project of maybe creating this T2. Certainly we have T2, right? Creating a rolling release binary distribution as binary compatible as possible with super snappy updates, and Wine packaged in a way that most of the Windows stuff, like really trying to really give it some polishing in a way that makes normal people really be able to use it, similar to don't fiddle around, just like download this to USB stick, boot it on a lot of hardware, nicely integrated. I don't know, maybe I should try. Maybe it even, usually even I read somewhere, like, what was it? Some photo sharing stuff, like was it Flickr or what? Some photo sharing stuff of whoever they created a game or chat or whatever, and it wasn't successful, and the only successful one was the image sharing stuff or something of that sort. So sometimes, what I mean is, sometimes you do something for many years, like our exact scan or something, and for many years it's not as successful until there's like just some spark here and there, and then it takes off, like one side idea, like some side project like this, like one very polished maybe. The big problem personally with Linux, or the two big problems which I mentioned earlier, not only 1001 Linux distributions, which each day you see a pop-up or pop-in or whatever. Probably I should actually Google it again. I actually Googled it just earlier this afternoon for my brother. I forgot it already. Way Linux Matebook. What pop-up, or what even was the stupid name, Linux on Chinese make channeling polished, deepin pop-up, deepin. Yeah, you can't make these names up. 10,000 and yeah, one. In my opinion, the two major things that are hindering Linux adoptions are the 1010 Linux distributions, because each and every one, also commercial support a nightmare. Each and every one is using something else. Even for ourselves with our Linux project, it's a total nightmare, because certainly very few, except on their Cavium, Octeon or so router, use T2. So if we deal with something, it's always Astra Linux, Deepin Linux, Red Flag Linux, you name it. And the other thing is the desktop and UI wars, half of the stuff, GTK, the other half of the stuff, Qt, which we also made a video, Qt, like huge monster, right? Qt already as large as an operating system shouldn't be. Let's see what other. Stephen Wang prefers just to be server, minimal install with App Store that saves all config. I prefer the OS to be server, minimal install with App Store that serves all config. Saves storage network easily. Modular App Store. Wish there was a Linux on-demand site that builds what I want. That is interesting, but you mean for servers, or you mean for build something dedicated for servers? Let's see, what else did we are talking about? Desktop Linux. There's little financial, what is even very, I think I missed here quite some. The scrolling is a little bit strange. Windows is a hybridish system. Yeah, macOS is also, well, hybrid, not really. Yeah, we suggest, so okay, we had this. Talking about desktop Linux, there's financial incentive to create a polished desktop Linux. Unfortunately, Chrome OS is Linux, but based around spying like Windows. Yeah, Chrome OS, the problem is also that it's so much web-based, although yes, you certainly probably could use it somewhat without it, but we have such security issues because complicated and lazy. I would even say security issue, I would agree mostly actually, but it's not even complicated, but also because we are using so insecure languages, right? And everyone is just doing their bit filling, right? If, for example, of course, C strings are error prone, which is even I myself after 20 years probably seen yesterday's Monster live stream, and we made some mistakes there with manual bootloader memory fiddling there and embarrassing bugs. And D-Target-C is old. So yeah, it's not even overcomplicated, just like everything is a little bit insecure, and just it takes someone to find those insecurities. And if you, that is why what I said earlier, if we are honest, we can't use C in my opinion. But again, you probably this will, as usual, trigger someone, and you will probably disagree. So C is old. That's comments there detailed. C is old. It has its place, and it's very nice for low-level work, for network multi-user OS. No, yeah. But I would also say, well, C is maybe for microcontroller, but even there you could certainly, not only could you run Python or Lua, or certainly Rust. And probably there's probably no, being honest, there's probably not really much I can do, not get into Rust. Probably I need to check that out more. But yeah, also this is why I'm saying this is crazy, right? If you millions lines of code, let's be honest, millions lines of code, even if they are open source and bug free, which let's be honest, they are not, right? Each day, each week, even Linux, I don't need to go further. I did this already, going to Kernel.org and reading here the latest, which by the way, okay, we don't have probably a new release, but let's be honest, so this bounds, there is each, although this shouldn't occur in practice, it's a good idea to bounce check the length of the SID element. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Ensure the SID element is bounce checked prior to invoking memcopy. Yeah, let's be honest, right? Binder, don't modify VMA bounds and whatever. And also recurring theme of revert, right? Because Linux kernel bug in 2019, revert enable SMB bus on newer 2008 plus systems. This commit apparently use something as manufacturer's data isn't accurate and breaks all the laptops. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Also, by the way, I said this before, maybe we should not use artificial intelligence to cherry pick stable. In my opinion, really, this kind of changes should have never made it into stable series, although not really sure if that wasn't the stable series, but in general, yeah, fix EEH during kexec, this reverts commit, this breaks some boards, like, yeah. Also, yeah, stuff should be more tested. Also, like one huge address space, right? And 20 years, been there, done that, and MIPS64 init still doesn't work after so many hours in. People want performance over security. Intel has track record, says Mitchell in the comments. Still buying Intel chips aren't demanding OpenBSD despite its security. But OpenBSD is also, the last time I checked the monolithic kernel, so OpenBSD security is only based on less random changes and more review. It's basically, don't touch what OpenBSD moving towards microkernel. Why is the future is what? So I didn't want to Google microkernel. This for sure is a totally classic BSD, as we all know it, one address space, monolithic. Monolithic, yeah, just as expected here. And it's just based on more code review, less random changes, exactly what I would suggest to the Linux kernel, but nobody listened to me for 20 years. That's what we started the YouTube channel for. People want performance, that is true. People want performance, and that is why people like Linus Torvalds and his friends and family are constantly, no, we're not doing microkernel because performance. But I would argue, yes, Intel also had exactly this track record of breaking security for performance, but that is why we should, at least on top of this, have more secure performance. And also, yeah, there are now also, yeah, like 10 performance, like if you would have something really substantially more secure, can you really comfortably run anything with all the IT news that we shout out here ourselves in this news broadcast? Can you really, with a clean state of mind, can you really sleep at night running some servers based on this software that we have? I'm not really sure anymore, actually, but as usual, leave me in the comments. Yeah, Redux, we already posted it. Also, the Redux code is a little bit, yeah, not really sure. They use a lot what looks like sockets and might be securer, but maybe performance-wise a little bit extremely on the not designing. But yeah, although we certainly appreciate any research efforts, and Heiko has more potential than people realize, says Mitchell, just sent at this point. The problem with Heiko, by the way, I tried to boot Heiko. There you see, I don't make a video about each random garbage. I tried to boot Heiko on the Sony Vario P. It didn't boot on the Sony Vario P with some kernel oops there. So if you ever, well, whatever is wrong with that. But the problem with Heiko is that it's not compatible with anything. I think if you would want to do something commercial today that is potentially as successful as macOS, well, like a 8 to 12 or so, whatever study you trust, study is yeah, successful, but then the benefit of Linux is certainly compatibility, right? So you could run all the, it's a Linux, you could run all the Linux, and with Wine you could run quite some Windows, so that gives you pretty high theoretically compatibility index. And if you maintain this, do it right and maintain it right, very theoretically, if you want to go completely nuts, some people even start macOS compatibility. Not that this could go somewhere soon, macOS Linux Wine API something, whatever the name for that was. Okay, then not Wine. Whatever compart layer. They have some simple stuff running. macOS, what? I didn't want mine. What? Whatever this was, I don't know, whatever that was. There was some project somewhere. But it's not running yet much. But if you wanted to go totally nuts, you could theoretically start to engineer some macOS compatibility in there. And if the problem is, of course, you could certainly not take iMovie for all the internal private APIs with video encode and decode and whatnot. That certainly would be a huge effort. But some basic, or even like there is even GNU Step, right? Don't even need to go that far. But GNU Step does not implement all of the hidden private modern APIs. But very theoretically, you could start to engineer that you have even a Linux with Windows and Mac compatibility, very theoretically, maybe, if you would go crazy. Comments in the audience. Hey, oh, wait a second. There are many comments that where did I start? And Desktop Linux has its problems, but wouldn't call it nightmare, says Mitchell. Wait, I somehow missed a lot. Here we are, scrolling somewhat. Riff asks whether I'm in December in Leipzig. Didn't plan so. Is there an event? Did I miss something? You probably ask because you are there. And Mitchell, so much for the topic of comes for familiarity. People use what's familiar, even when they know about security vulnerabilities or privacy issues. Yeah, that's certainly why still most people use Windows. And to be honest, many people even don't like Windows that much. They also don't like Mac so much. So, I mean, many people, like a very, very high percentage, like maybe even my father, which, fun fact, my father asked me to install him some Linux for some stuff. But even so, another fun anecdote, it's a little bit private, but it's not a really fun anecdote is probably, I can probably say it, the father of Clifford Wolf. Clifford Wolf, the creator of Rock Linux and FPGA, goodness of Joses. I was totally surprised a very long time ago, like 15 years ago in 2004 or 3 or something, when Rock Linux, I sent some stuff to Rock Linux, so contributing 1998, contributing to Rock Linux, nobody really cared, so I sent like 10 or 20 patches, like adding Emacs or adding this and that, so, and even maybe NFS server was broken because nobody cared about an NFS server, KNFSD was new or something, and so I sent like 10, 20 patches over my trusty V90 modem, 56K baud in 1998, nobody cared, so no, I never got any feedback, so that is why I started desktop Rock Linux, right? So because I never so much to hear whatever you send something, nobody cares. So that is how I started desktop Rock Linux in 1998-ish for our, this was like our Rock Linux with the local friends and family, our Rock Linux for desktop. And I was so surprised, like adding KDE and GNOME and all the fun stuff. And so I basically have been there, done that, just that I was in school and just a hobby product. But I was so surprised that the father of Clifford Wolf there, of Rock Linux inventor fame, was running desktop Rock Linux. That just was like, seriously, what the heck, like, why? Well, yeah, of the creator of Rock Linux, fun little story. Hope he doesn't mind that I told that story. But that was really funny, funny anecdote. But yeah, so much to people. So in Windows land, people would want to use something else, but many people I met is like, yeah, but we do not want to buy Macs because we don't like Macs and this overpriced and thermal throttling and no ports and stuff. And there you see how bundling hardware and software, I think the market share also Hackintosh, right? So many people running Hackintosh nowadays because even Mac fans many hardcore Mac fans don't like Macs, the hardware, and run this Hackintosh professionally because just they want. And there you see, in my opinion, the market share of macOS could be much higher. Certainly the latest sandboxing stuff and App Store and notarization stuff, not something that I support on top of the Mac hardware, but I think the market share could be so much higher of Apple if they would have long ago unbundled Mac hardware and Mac software. Exactly what is happening with the Hackintosh, maybe why they lock down macOS more than ever before, because maybe fighting Hackintosh to some degree, but certainly they are losing quite some hardware, quite some software installations there, and there you see people want something else, just they don't want Mac. And many people tried Linux. Even I met so many people who tried Linux, but they found it too command line and too hacky, and they had to hack this to use Wine or fiddle around with NVIDIA driver to have NVIDIA driver or whatever, one state or the other. So there certainly is total huge potential, very theoretically maybe. Here, LXD Pop OS, more problems. I have more problems using non-Linux operating systems. To be honest, says Mitchell. Yeah, also, yeah, even I install a beta of macOS, doesn't install, right? Even on Windows. My Windows VMs, I start the Windows VM every 2 weeks, and every 2 weeks it can't. I don't know what's up with. Maybe you need to install Windows updates more often than every 14 days, but in my virtual machines, the updates usually don't install very much. Like usually fail and this and that and 5 times, and maybe eventually it's a little bit strange, even in a virtual machine that you only start every 14 days. And OS that's not include any apps, just hardware management, and we built a task manager and log view. I mean, Stephen, so okay, and so Stephen, you would want that for it's an interesting idea, which actually maybe I should actually really try this. Just some minutes. This is not even too far away from our regular minimal T2 stuff. Just like really update seed, like really once a year base image, and then otherwise rolling update seed, like really commercially supported, like for a decade. Really curious of maybe we should really give that a try, and maybe even mix the bloody NVIDIA drivers in there for whatever until they sue us or something for best NVIDIA driver. And although I'm not advocating NVIDIA drivers, but whatever. But yeah, this would be maybe some like really polished macOS base of half a gigabyte download of just sorted Linux base with an app store that you could use, maybe even, but that is probably a video for another. I have some app store ideas and app notarization stuff, but this video becomes too long. It's really amazing that so many people watch. And again, really curious comments now and later. Also, if you watch this in a month or year, really try to always keep up with all the YouTube comments, as many notifications as we get here. Sometimes we get some, sometimes not. What do you mean by AI OS? Welcome Old School mentions this. Maybe you want to rewind. Check Glocus even lighter than Bish. XD, what? Yeah. Performance. Show why of them run Java on the desktop to run shitty web browser with everything in JavaScript. Lol, yeah, exactly. But yeah, that is something for another value. Modern hardware is so fast, it's just ridiculous. Yeah, also modern hardware that is also 70 people. That is always, thanks God. Thankfully I have some old tea in the meantime. Some not a microwave in the office. So that is to add. In exactly this point, that hardware is so fast, but I don't even think that Linux is making the best use of the hardware, like parallel execution or even just-in-time compiling all the libraries, like even the libc, just-in-time compiling it for the latest and greatest instruction, like starting from the C or base system library, not making even the best use, and then stuff gets larger and bloatier, and even like on Linux, like it's of course hilarious that in 2019 we do not have a hardware accelerated video playback in any browser unless you compile Chrome. And so much you can do with algorithms like a microkernel and more parallel, even like maybe a better windowing system, like so much Xorg server that like Wayland is coming for a decade. And yeah, so much, or certainly the graphic performance of Linux not. To be honest, graphic performance of Mac OS and Windows certainly often more snappy than Linux. And that certainly is a shame of, yeah, a decade of Wayland is coming and also X drivers even losing to the acceleration function that I also would have never have allowed. Why not build something based on Darwin, macOS Core, it's open source? Yeah, fun fact, that was very theoretically, we wanted to do this. We have this on the feature list of T2. Do we have a T2 here somewhere? We have here some really old to do. Where would that be? Maybe here, maybe. Okay, issue tracker is down since a decade. Probably can remove this. Where would that be? We had here also, probably I could also, yeah, a decade ago we started here somewhere. By the way, fun fact, we applied a couple of times for summer of code. We were never accepted, which is also a little bit unfair in my opinion. Like we had here, like this is a decade old summer of code proposals, LLVM integration. Yeah, in the meantime, I've done this myself. Thank you very much. A lot of other stuff not done. Yeah, even my Minix 3 microkernel. Integration of GNU-Hurt, OpenBSD Haiku, in T2 for building a Haiku-based T2 Haikus, yeah, a decade-old summer of code ideas. Integrate Sandbox, yay, not Sandbox, Scratchbox or whatever. Yeah, I think we somewhere had that. Where would be our, I have no idea actually where our, where would this be? I don't know, somewhere we had Open Darwin, so wherever, maybe I need to use Google to T2SDE, Open Darwin, we somewhere at some point, here's somewhere open, it's in the, it's in the introduction, stupid. But T2 is being expanding for a decade. Minix, Hurt, Open Darwin, Haiku, OpenBSD, yeah, we had already a decade ago this idea, because of course, I've used T2 scripts like Homebrew on macOS. Certainly nothing is stopping you for using the same. And a fun fact, I've even done this. I integrated, personally integrated, at least using MinGW stuff for building. So I personally used T2 scripts, although it's bit rotten a little bit, but at some point it was possible, maybe needs a little bit touch up, but like to build stuff to use on Windows like rsync or stuff. Been there, done that. But yeah, this Open Darwin is, many people tried. The problem is I personally wouldn't really go much into that because maintenance nightmare, and it's more like Google Summer of Prod, interesting idea, but there is not much happening there. So you would be mostly on your own, and Mach microkernel is not the best performance and setup probably for the most part. But yeah, thanks for the idea. I had the idea. But if the problem is, it mostly makes sense to use Linux and stuff, because then you have the biggest community of reusing, like shameless stealing all others' resources, like what all the distributions do, right? Waiting for other people to fix PowerPC, Mesa, AGP, whatever is broken there, and still not done, and MIP64, initRD, whatever is broken there. So if you want to reuse the most community resources of Mesa, all the, certainly it is outstanding work, right? Just like on this driver architecture, that it's not microkernel and stuff. But anyway, super long talk. Many people have tuned in. Thank you so much for watching. We are mostly through with the comments. Detailed server 1, okay. Leipzig, what? 36, yeah. Problem is, I've not been there to Chaos Computer Congress stuff for decades. Mostly because, yeah, probably since it left Berlin, in Berlin it was, but even in Berlin the last years I've never been there because it's too inconvenient. You already work, well, at least we already work here so much, and stuff that at least through Christmas and New Year, the time didn't really fit me, when that's nearly only days you get off with the family, maybe eventually see your parents and stuff. And so yeah, this is why I've been there decades ago, but like 23, 24, 25, even one camp in 15 years ago to some camp, but otherwise, yeah. But Maybe I should have joined the camp though. But what I was looking for, Darwin code smaller. The best form of security is to just make the code smaller. Yeah, somewhat true. And also not maybe write everything in single bit and byte fiddling C stuff with pointers for everything. Previous live stream, plenty of stuff can go wrong by booting an initrd and whatever's happening there. Why not build something Darwin? Okay, been there. Yeah, microkernel, it's only a little bit microkernel, right? The macOS only one huge Unix task, mostly in that. Like to have as designed manual, Leipzig, something, HTTP Darwin, open, actually that was, maybe what happens when I click that? No, also happens that. Probably can pull this out here, so that's saying, wait, Darwin system didn't links this here correctly. But again, it's, as far as I've seen, mostly one huge Unix task, right? In my opinion, macOS and Darwin microkernel only so skin deep with one huge Unix task. It's like basically my impression is they use the microkernel as a thin hardware abstraction layer and not really many of the microkernel features. But correct me if I'm wrong, and as usual, as I said in the beginning, leave all your comments, ideas, feedback, and shell is to bear only use it for my server's desktop system with beneficial base install with GUI network storage security for Measure. Anyway, thanks for all this feedback. Again, I'm so looking forward to all your comments and hope I didn't trigger you too much. Yeah, seriously, this kind of YouTube stuff is trying to get some serious discussion going. Thank you so much for tuning in, Detard, and all the recurring viewers and everyone who is new to this channel. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, and I hope to see you soon for all these fun discussions together here live on YouTube.